Welcome back, folks, and thank you so much for joining us again this week for another soul-driven interview. I'm really excited to dive in with today's guest and nerd out on all things spirituality and intuition and just, yeah. Anytime I have someone on the podcast that I feel is of like mind, I'm just curious to get to know them. And today's guest is someone that I haven't met before. So I'm extra excited to get to know her and just learn about what it is that she does and share her story with you all. So let's go ahead and dive in. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the show, Amanda Monnier. Yes.
Yes. Thanks, Anna. I appreciate you having me. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be wonderful.
I didn't like totally murder your last name, did I?
Oh, no, you're good. No worries. It's a little tongue twister. So
is it French or?
So I believe it's actually pronounced Monnier, but my family, my grandpa grew up in Nebraska, so they say Monnier. They add a little, a little twang to it. So I'm just like, I don't know, just roll with it for 32 years now. So
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't from the South, but I pretty much grew up there because we moved to the South when I was young, and people would always call me Anna, but at home I was Anna. And I was like, so one day I went home, was like, Dad, what's the deal? Is my name Anna or Anna? And he was like, it's Anna. Because my name is spelled Anna on my birth certificate. But I was like, I wanted people to say my name right. So I went through all these different spellings for a hot minute and then finally landed on the one that I have still to this day. But suffice it to say that still didn't help. So
I know, guilty, because I asked you when we got online, I was like, is it Anna or Anna? Like, I was pretty sure it was Anna, but
it's all good. It's all good. I have been called Una, Ina. I mean, like
Una.
Back in my waitressing days, it was all the things. So it's fine. No problem. So welcome to the show. So you are a holistic healer and New Earth visionary, and correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So I'd love to just kind of jump in with questions and just get to know you. Again, a lot of the folks that I have on my show, I've connected with in some way or another. But I love getting to know new people. And so very excited for this. The first question I ask all of my guests, what makes you soul driven?
I love that question. Ever since I was a little girl, I always knew that there was just something more going on. Like, I couldn't explain it though. I just felt like the way that I was being told things worked, I was like, this just does not seem to be true. And so later throughout my life, when I had my awakening in consciousness, I was like, okay, now it's starting to make sense. And then started that external journey, later turned inward. And so it's just always been this inner knowing inside of me that I just had to really find out the truth of who I was at the end of the day. That's what I've come to learn. Just understand who I am at a deeper level and what I'm here to do. And at this point, like knowing what I know, because I always say it's like you can know something and then you can know it at like a cellular level to where you can't unknow what you know consciously. And so now after having this awakening in consciousness, it's like there's no other option for me. And so really what it means to me is just bringing more of my unique essence online and letting go of everything's that's not that. So all the conditioning, the imprints, and all the lies, all the characters that I've played, all the things, and really getting down to that truth and that expansiveness. And so, basically, in a nutshell, it's like I just can't not at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think those of us who are kind of born seekers inevitably end up on this path, in one way or another. And I think that it is such a path because it's forever unfolding. There's no end to it. At least for me on my path, every time I think that I've like gotten somewhere and like understood something, it's like, that implodes and then I have to kind of start all over again. I always laugh. There was this one time in my life before I met my partner, this was about 6 years ago, and I was single, and I had like been single purposefully for about a year and a half. And I was just like, I was in the most spectacular place. And I remember coming home from yoga one day and I was like, this is it. I have nothing to heal. I am like perfect now. I've got it all. Like I've done so well. And it's embarrassing to even say that, but it's true. Like I literally thought that. And then it was shortly after I met my partner, and it was like this dumpster truck pulled up and just like unloaded all of the things that I had yet to even remotely touch. um, when you're single, you don't have that mirror in your life to constantly show you.
Oh my gosh, totally.
But yeah, it's one of those things that never end. So you have so much going on right now, and so many different things that you do, but I'd really love to kind of take it back a little bit. I am so curious about the fact that you were in law enforcement. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a cop, pretty hardcore. And I've worked with different police stations throughout my life and was an interpreter when I was in college. For whatever reason, I've always had a lot of respect and appreciation for law enforcement, especially cops, just knowing that they put their life on the line every freaking day that they show up to work. But I'd love to hear your story, because similar to me, who I used to own a marketing agency and now I'm a spiritual guide, you used to be in law enforcement and now you're like the new earth lady. So
Yeah. Well, first off, I could totally relate to what you shared around. It's like you get to these points and you feel so expansive. You're like, what could there be more? And that's always been like on the cusp of like the next round of dark night of the soul for me, or some really deep breakthroughs or whatever. So I can completely relate to that. And yeah, so I was in law enforcement for about 6 years. I was a probation officer. So it was definitely a journey. And I actually had my initial awakening, spiritual awakening in consciousness, whatever you want to call it, a couple years into my journey. And it was so interesting for me because I look back, and being in law enforcement was also kind of a way, oddly, how I stayed safe, because I stayed safe by being in my very masculine energy, constantly in that like do mode. And so when I had this awakening when I was a couple years in, it was like I was already kind of the anomaly, because before I had this awakening, I was into like the yoga and the green drinks, and they're like, oh, there's Monnier with her green $8 drink and her yoga mat and all this and that. So I was already I always kind of felt like the oddball out on a lot of things, because I never felt like I fit into the societal norms that were created. So it was just a very interesting thing, because when I started in this career, I was like, this is my dream career. I'm never never going to leave. And then a couple years before I left, I was like, oh, maybe I am going to leave. And I didn't know what that would look like, but there was just something that inside me that was like, this is not the end. This is not the end all be all. This is just a chapter in my journey. And so I realized, like, sometimes we get so fixated on, putting attachment and labels to things, that it's like, well, maybe we can let the thing show us what it's meant to show us. And that goes for what I've learned with relationships too. It's like, we're so quick to, look 12 months down the line or whatever. It's like, well, maybe that thing wants to show us something. And so we can let that thing show us what it wants to. So ended up leaving law enforcement, sidestepped over to my family's business for a couple months, which I later realized was worse than collecting probation urine samples. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I was actually in escrow. I was supposed to move. We were going to be opening up another branch of the family business. So I'm in escrow, about to literally not have a home in about 15 days. And I just had this like, it's like we had these little nudges, and then sometimes they turn into screams and we don't listen to the little nudges. Turned into a scream. It was like kind of like tower moment. And I was just, I literally quit on the spot. I've never quit a job on the spot in my entire life. So I quit the job on the spot, and I'm sitting in my car and I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, I've never not had a job since I was 15. I just quit my job. My home is literally about to not be my home in 15 days. And I'm like, well, okay, universe, like, I hope you have a plan. And so long story short, I decided to start my business. And this was about 15 or so months ago. And I would be lying if I said it was all sunshine and rainbows, because that was another part of the journey. I thought, going into business, I was just going to slide on in and it was going to be, easy peasy. And it definitely wasn't. And so I've learned more in the last year. I've cried more in the last year than my entire life, but also like this place that I've arrived to, it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because it's like we get to meet ourselves in the midst of the challenges and the pivots and the shadows, and the light is also beautiful, but it's the contrast that really has us appreciating the light at a deeper level. So I've learned, for me at least, and with everything I say, I always say, take what resonates and leave the rest, but it's like both of them. And it's just led to a deeper understanding of myself and what I'm here to do. And so it's just been a very interesting twist and turns that I never expected.
So we talked about human design briefly before we started recording. So what is your profile and type?
4/6 sacral generator.
Perfect. Okay, nice. Yeah. So it was interesting while you were talking. I'm like, I wonder if she's a 3, if she's a third line.
Oh yeah. I could see there being a little bit of that here, the experimentation and all the things.
Yeah. That's cool though. For me, the journey has always been very similarly that, I mean, it's what adds flavor to the path, and honestly, I think that like, even for a 4/6, like, oh my gosh, that's just you building on your wisdom, all the tears and blood and sweat and all that stuff you've been going through, right? Is just making you that much more equipped to be that much better for what it is that you're doing. But I'm sure that transition was kind of intense. So like, was it difficult for you mentally to make that transition from, like what I call the 3D world into like having a spiritual business? Like for me, it's still something I wrestle with. I owned, an agency for a decade, and felt very comfortable in that, easy to talk to people at parties. And now it's like, I've really had to think about what I want to share and how I want to share it and who I'm talking to. And you know what I mean? But I'm curious, in the midst of building this business, if you have struggled with that difference or what that's been like for you.
Oh, entirely. Yeah. And I think it's been most intense for my ego. I'll be completely raw and real. Because when we go from these 3D societal structures and we have a way where we fit in, I think at the end of the day, as human beings, you want to be seen, felt, heard, understood, so there's that level of community that, most, if not all of us, I feel desire. And so, yeah, when I shifted, I was like, when people would ask me what I do initially, I'd be like, because it's like, I just felt like nobody would really understand. And so I've come to a place where I can explain it, to where it's not my job to convince people, right? Like the right people, I've learned, will find it, and there'll be a resonance, even if it's just a frequency resonance. And they're still like, I don't know exactly what you're saying, but I can feel through the frequencies that this is something that I am kind of here for. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting and very humbling. I will say it's been a very humbling experience, because it's just been, again, meeting myself at the deepest of levels and going from just, the stability in a career, the pension, all the things that come with that, the consistency in having that paycheck, it's going to be in your account every 2 weeks. And then going to where you're like, oh, I mean, I know I have the tools, but no one told me about the business side of things. No one explained that one to me. And so it's been, again, very humbling, but it's like, as you grow through the challenges and as you just don't give up, you learn and you implement and you pivot. And so that has been the gift for me, is really that it didn't come easy. That even though sometimes it's like, I'm like, okay, like part of me is like, am I supposed to give up on this? But at the end of the day, it's like, if we keep going and we don't give up, even if it's not easy, we can learn through it, and we can really, for some of us, it just might not come as easy as it does for others. And there might be more learning, and then our learning, then we can then take in to others. Because one of the big things that I've learned as well is that I wasn't meant to create in this old 3D templates. There's a lot of us here on this planet right now. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of them. We're actually writing the script for the new. And so the old way simply doesn't work, because those structures energetically, we've evolved past those. And so if we've evolved past those and we try to force ourselves into that structure, there's not going to be that resonance. We're going to kind of feel that backfire, especially if we're forcing it. And then, really understanding ourselves and the way we show up, and human design and the gene keys has been a beautiful way that I've learned to do that, because we all don't manifest the same. We all don't create the same. We're not all here to do the same things. And so when we have everything, that's why I loved your podcast episode on it was like, we have the black, so black and white. It's like, well, I loved how you said it. Can we have a third option? There is a third option, and we're creating that third option.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This past year, I would say, in the midst of building out this business, and really, I would say maybe that last 8 to 10 months or whatever, my huge focus has been shedding all of the conditioning of how marketing is supposed to go versus what feels good to me. All the things that my marketing brain, and this is still something I'm working through. I took a 6-month break from social media and just let one of my assistants kind of handle pushing out content for the podcast, but disappeared from those on my phone or anything like that, because I just really wanted to step outside of it, because it had felt empty to me for so long. And even in the midst of building this business, I really have a lot of resistance to building it the way that I've built other businesses, or the way that, so I fully resonate with what you're talking about. And that's certainly something I think that people need to feel more free about, whether they're building a business or whether they're building their life, maybe a relationship, your relationship with your significant other doesn't need to look like it looks to everyone else. People can't believe that my partner and I are not married yet. And we're just that's not where we're at. And, we're just doing our thing. And, our relationship looks very different from most people's relationship, and the way that we communicate or things are our priorities. And his family, it's so funny because they think we're the strangest people, but it just doesn't matter. This new paradigm that we have stepped into, what you're speaking to is just the importance of us showing up authentically for ourselves. And that really helps us to get into alignment. So the transition for you, in regards to kind of making that jump into being an entrepreneur, I'd love to know some things that were really helpful for you. Because I know we definitely have a lot of folks who listen to this podcast who have their own businesses, and or who are considering potentially stepping out there. So I'd love for you to share with us just some things that were helpful for you.
Yeah, one of the main things that I learned was that, and we've kind of already touched on this, is I don't have to follow the way someone else built their business. And was my experience, because I hired a business coach. And I say I paid for a very beautiful lesson because I thought that it was going to be so different than what it was. And we can get kind of caught up in what everyone else is doing and how everyone else is showing up. But when we follow our own guidance and our own soul frequency and our own blueprint, and we really trust ourselves. For me, I'm slowly transitioning off of Facebook. I'm not necessarily going to delete my profile, but I'm not feeling resonant with Facebook. I still am on Instagram for now, but I just recently joined Insight Timer, and it's like a meditation app, but teachers and healers and, all the spiritual things, you can create a teacher account and you can put your content on there, and there's millions of people who are already on there. And so that felt like a yes for me. So it's those sorts of things where it's really tuning into how you intuitively process, what is a yes for you and what is a no for you, and going with that, and also making everything your own. One thing I fell a bit into with my programs and certifications and all the things was I was like, oh, I got to do it this way, just the way it's taught. But that's actually not true. I mean, it can be true, but what I found is if we're making it our own, then it's connected to our own frequency and our source connection. We're not plugged into someone else's truth, because when we're plugged into someone else's absolute truth, it's going to bleed over into our work, and then it's not fully us. And so those are some of the main things that I really realized. And also taking inventory of like where your yes is really a no, because when we have a lot of things in our lives where we're saying yes, but it's really a no, it can really muck up and really make fuzzy our ability to receive, because it creates this confusion. The universe doesn't care. It's all about frequency. So the universe doesn't care what we're saying yes and no to. But at the same time, if we're saying yes to something that feels really heavy to us, or out of obligation, or all the shoulds, then we're sending that message that is where our consciousness is at. So if everything's just a beautiful mirror of our consciousness, we can constantly be looking and seeing what's going on. And if we look at it as everything's happening for us, if we get activated or triggered, I come to look at those as beautiful gifts and insights where I can go within myself, because we could go into victim mode, or we can say, oh, what's like the silver lining here? It's bringing up something for me. And that happened to me a couple of days ago, where this thing got activated inside of me. It was a really old pattern, but it was activated by someone in my present. And it was all around almost feeling like I needed to go in and like save people from like chaos. And it's like, whoa, because that was some things in my childhood where that was infused into how I showed up for people. It was like, I felt like I needed to save the day. And I'm like, well, first off, that's not the type of client that I want to be connecting with. And second of all, it doesn't feel good. So we can use these sorts of things as a beautiful guidepost and indication of where we're at, and literally in that specific moment. That's the thing too. We can make all these things so much more difficult than they really are. We can pause, presence ourselves, and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's coming up. Sometimes we don't even need to know. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and release this and download a new program because this one is outdated. And so we can really just take inventory and shift these things in our business. And then the last thing I would say is, I've mentioned this a couple of times, the human design and the gene keys, because our gene keys give us such a beautiful compass blueprint for how we're meant to show up in our business. And I have not found one thing in my gene keys where I'm like, that doesn't resonate. It is all resonant. So the gene keys find you when you're ready for it. So if that's pinging in your system, it might be open to go pull your chart and see if it resonates, because there's even a sphere, the life's work is tied to your brand. And so there's just all these beautiful breadcrumbs in there that you can contemplate and really understand yourself on a deeper level. And that's the shadow aspects, the gift, and the full expansionness, which is called the city. So it's just been game changing, those things that have shown up for me within the last 15 months of starting my business.
That's awesome. Those are great lessons. I was just listening to a discussion with Richard Rudd this morning. So love that man.
Oh, yes.
The, what is it? The Seven Seals. Don't even get me started. So beautiful. So one of the things that you touched on, which I really, really loved, and give me a second here because my brain gets excited and then I lose my words. Because you touched on so many really great things, but it'll come back to me in a second. So with and just to kind of clarify, so with the business coach that you hired, essentially sort of what happened is that the mold that they were kind of wanting to invite you into just wasn't yours. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%. So it was like a combination of like love stuff, but business stuff, and no judgment at all. But it just wasn't at the time of where my awareness was. I thought it was like literally the savior. And so that's the thing. I put this person on a pedestal and really, I feel that where we're going, like hierarchy is not a thing. We all, again, are a beautiful piece of the puzzle. So what worked for this person and them manifesting, and creating their business, it wasn't resonating with me. Like there was, for example, this video that I was part of my homework or assignments, and it was all about overcoming objections. And I'm like, that just feels so icky to my body. I'm like, that is never going to be the way I run my business, because to me, my frequency and my resonance and the way we show up, that's like, honestly, I feel the new age of marketing. That's what the marketing is, because anybody I've ever signed up to work with, Especially I'm saying like in the recent, once I've come to understand these things at a deeper level. I'll give an example. Dr. Kim Durrama has a beautiful program. It's called Awaken Your Business. And it was literally all about around creating a business in this unity, oneness consciousness. And I watched a talk and I was like, she spoke to my soul and I was like, I sign me up. Like, and the program resonated on the deepest of levels. So it's like that sort of resonance in working with, our unique design on how we process things and get to those yeses and nos, but it's the things like that. So I just knew that this didn't resonate with my system, but it was unconscious. This initial coaching thing. It was unconscious because there were so many things going on in my life and I was so new to this. So I didn't understand that we don't have to have a posting, you can if you want, if it is helpful, but you don't have to have a social media template. You don't have to have canned language that you use. You don't have to slide into people's DMs, which I never did. I don't resonate with that. But it's like, we don't have to do that because when we are in our unique expression, we're emanating that energetic frequency and those energetic codings that are unique to us, it activates something and the people that are really we're meant to work with. And I'm here for working with people where it's like that community, those soulmate clients. And so there's a different energetic, right? And it goes back to kind of that old 3D template. And this new template, I'll give a really quick story because I found this fascinating. So it was around, I believe it was CNN, and they were going to be launching the CNN Plus app. And they invested millions of dollars. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it was around $300 million into marketing this app. And the old marketing clearly didn't work because it was like less, I think like than 50,000 people that signed up for this app, and the project was a fluke. So I feel that anything rooted in that corporate greed and all the things that are not of truth because of where we're at as an evolution of human consciousness simply isn't going to work. You're like throwing mud at the wall and it might stick. You might get like one or two clients. It might work a smidge, but it's about the long game and really bringing this resonance and the truth of who you are online and letting that be that marketing, that emanation of who you are, your unique essence versus the ads, which I'm not saying ads are bad, but it's like the old structures, just the alone in and of themselves. We've evolved past that. We're just not resonating with that any longer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the course, this series, the confidence series that I just launched a couple of days ago, it was came in as a transmission the first week in May when I was on vacation. And I knew immediately it was something I needed to share very quickly and launch, within a month. And I put together a landing page and I shared it with a couple of people. And, one of the folks who listened or like who was reading over it was like, well, you need to explain this. You need to explain this. You need to make sure you outline all of the benefits and outline, like basically get super detailed and all of this. And I was just like, no, honestly, this was so divinely channeled through to me. I fully trust that the people who are meant to come will come. And it's not like I won't promote it, but at the same time, I don't have that attachment to like, oh my gosh, everything has to be perfectly right. When I shared it with folks, it was most important for me to share with people who know me and be like, am I coming through? Do you hear me talking when you're reading this? And I think like exactly what you're saying. It's just, it's that authenticity. It's us showing up and being genuine and sharing our energy. And the people who are really attracted to that are going to be invited into that. And all of the extra things, some of them might help for sure. But I think for me, the way I look at it is like, what's the intention underneath it, right? If I'm looking for validation in regards to signups, or if I'm, like those things can really just cause a bit of a mess when it comes to business stuff. So that's why I was so curious about this switch from, again, like the 3D world to the spiritual, because it's like, things just don't work the same here.
Right. Yep. You get to learn that way. And one thing someone said to me the other day, and I was like, yeah, we were having a conversation back and forth about this. I'm like, I don't know about you, because I take like sometimes an hour to do my podcast notes. And then, even like if I have an offering, like, writing it, and I'm like, episodes that I'm like a heck yes for, I don't think I've ever read podcast notes. Not to say they aren't helpful, but and then the sales pages of people where I'm like already a yes, I've never gone through every line of those. So it's like sometimes, we get into like that more mind analytical space when it's, again, if it's all about resonance and frequency and those like just our innate essence coming through, it's like whatever that is oftentimes just perfect. It's just the perfect amount. When it's coming from like our heart and our soul, it's just so different.
Yeah. Well, it's pure. And because we are becoming more and more energetically attuned to one another, we're all so much more sensitive these days. We pick up on that so much more easily. I think, like we're really tapping into that, that frequency without even really thinking about it. So I'd love to talk with you about being a healer and calling yourself a healer. I'm really curious. I love having this conversation with people who have healer in their title, because I always hear a lot of chatter around the fact that like, no, I'm not a healer. I help people heal, so I can't call myself a healer. And I just feel like this is, again, my opinion, feel like this is a disempowered way of sharing what it is we've been empowered to do. So, but I would love to hear what being a healer is to you, if that was something that you struggled calling yourself, and a bit about the work you do as well.
Yeah. So I do call myself a healer, and I also, it's like / healing facilitator, because at the end of the day, I truly feel, and this is through my own journey of trying it both ways, that our healing is our choice. It's our responsibility. I've had healings where people kind of go into my field and they'll do things, but I feel that healing is really the most empowering when you have someone that is able to show up as like that beautiful mirror for you, that's able to tap into the field. I call it the higher self. So it's like the all that isness of you, past, present, future, all the ancestral stuff that you might be carrying, all the emotions in your field, the imprints, the conditionings, all the beautiful events. It contains literally everything. And it's an extension of your own source connection. So it's like both, right? Because for me, I love empowering my clients, but also it's like I've stepped into this frequency where I feel that when we've stepped into certain frequencies and we're emanating certain things, we now have that as an available offering to those in our circle. And so it's both, right? I found it one and the same, because I'm not like, oh, you're not empowered to heal yourself. I'm doing the healing. All the healing I do comes through basically the instructions that I'm getting, the attunements I've received, the frequencies, the intuition, but it's offered to the higher selves of the client, and it's funneled through their own beautiful lens. So it's guided by them. So again, it's just really important for me to remind people of how powerful they are and of who to be able to release all those things that aren't them. So in working with clients, it's like I have definitely developed the gifts of being able to tune into those things, whether it be physical body stuff or, different energetic blocks, because we're multi-dimensional beings and this stuff is multifaceted. It's layered. I struggled with acne up until age 31. I'm 32 now. And I've been on my healing journey for about 8 years, and it took me about 8 years to unravel all the things that were causing my acne. And one of the things was this deeply rooted identity structure that I was too much. My light was too bright. I literally put this cloak on. It was shown to me as like this costume. And so there were also levels and layers of things related to like viruses and bacteria that were coupling with it. So again, I said frequency a lot, but if there is a resonance, so low vibrational frequencies, for example, of guilt, shame, and unworthy, they resonate with the frequencies of viruses and bacteria. Funguses resonate with the frequencies of, why am I losing the word here? It starts in the resentment, resentment. And so when we have these low vibrational frequencies in our bodies, then we become magnets to some of the diseases. So it's all connected. There isn't like it's not by just a shot that you have like hip pain, right? There's something deeper going on, and it could be an emotional thing. It could be an energetic event. It could be some, there are a lot of us who have like the open head and ajnas that we really connect to the collective, and we might not even be realizing it. So a lot of times I'll ask someone that I'm working with, is this even yours? Because we can, I don't call it cord cutting, we can just clear the connection because we're always connected. So we can just clear that connection so you don't have to be picking up on stuff that feels heavy because you're of more service to yourself and then to others when you're in that high vibration. So we don't have to take ourselves there. So again, it's just so multi-layered and it can be so many different things. And it's really not one size fits all. So that's what I love about, as I'm doing these things, it's things that people can take when I'm not with them and be really tapping into on their own, because we all have access to this. It's just how in which we choose to connect with it. And the one thing that is just beyond powerful in all of this is our intention. So, and if we have that foundation for what our intention is, that allows the openings for what wants to come through.
Yeah, I love all of that. Question, just side, but in regards to like the fungus and the resentment, and are these things, I've heard about this through like the emotion code and body code. Is that kind of what you're referring to in regards to learning where these things come from?
So I actually did get certified in the emotion code. But actually what expanded my awareness on this is a certification in energetic allergy healing. So basically the fundamentals and foundation of this modality is that when we are not in harmony with something, when there's a resistance to something on any level, spiritual, emotional, mental. I could be allergic to my dog, but I could also be allergic to my computer. I could be allergic to, the trees outside. I could be allergic to a person. It's just when there's a resistance and we're not in harmony, we don't have that neutrality. There's a negative charge to it. We can have that charge to it. And so when we have these resistances, it really prevents that divine intelligence inside of us from being able to heal on the deeper levels. Because I always speak of this divine intelligence. It knows exactly what to do. It knew what to do when we were in our mother's womb. It knew to develop the liver cells. It knew to create the fingers and the toes. So we don't even necessarily have to tell it what to do. However, when we have this dense energy in the body that's mucking up the flow of energy and it's mucking up our body's ability to do what it needs to do to heal itself, because we're giving different instructions, because it's through our consciousness, our belief in something, the beliefs in our consciousness, our agreements that we have with things. There was an individual that I know that went into the doctor and got a diagnosis for Parkinson's. And there was not symptoms, at least to the magnitude of the symptoms that showed up 2 weeks after he was like, oh, I have Parkinson's. So there's also this power in our consciousness where when we agree to certain things and we say that as true, it becomes truth. It becomes a belief structure. And then when we reinforce these over time, it's like, well, whatever we're saying is true. It's truth.
Yeah. Do you believe it's easy to break those sorts of things?
That's just like such a nuanced question. I want to say yes, right? But sometimes these things can be very layered. So it's also, the journey I shared with my acne. There were times when I'm like, oh my gosh, nothing's going to work, because I tried every skincare. I tried so many different healing modalities. But the one thing is also, again, this perseverance and this not giving up. And really, I don't feel that we're necessarily handed anything as far as when something's coming up, and especially with body healing, that we're not able to process, because the body and the unconscious, the main jobs are to keep us safe. Our unconscious really is just doing its best to protect us. And so to answer your question, I'm going to say yes. I do feel it's easy, because that's what that's part of what I'm here to bring to people, is that it can be easy, but it doesn't mean there might not be challenges. It doesn't mean there might not be emotions. It doesn't mean there might not be little walls that we push up against, and then we have to pivot to something else and go somewhere else, because it's like, maybe we have a certain mentor that can take us to a certain distance, but then it's time to pivot because we're ready for this next level of expansiveness. And oftentimes the challenges that we go through are what we're meant to bring here to help other people transcend. Because when we've met ourselves at those deep levels and we've been in the depths of it and we understand these things and we have a unique way of expressing it and helping people, then it just sends those ripple effects out, because it's like this offering. This is what works for me. Like, take it, make it your own. And here's some suggestions. And it adds a whole nother level and layer to it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I was diagnosed, as ADHD as a kid. And that was, I feel like labels can be so limiting and I'm always cautious to apply labels, and yet at the same time, they do help us to understand things. I mean, our brains just we like to categorize. It helps us to feel safe, right? But I remember the first time I got my astrology chart read, I was like, so this is why I'm ADHD. Like it's right here. It's in my astrology chart. In regards to my energy and how frenetic it can be and how fast it can be and all of these things. And I mean, like even talking about human design, like reading my human design, diving into that. So I love what you shared. And absolutely, I think about the healing thing. It's perfect. Like kind of goes back to what we were talking about, what you had shared before about the polarity with, black and white. There's the third option, right? So it really is both. Because I 100% agree, folks who show up for my Akashic Record readings who are ready to really be there, do work, be intentional. It's night and day from folks who are maybe just there for an experience. And you know what I mean? I know that you've had those kinds of clients too. It's night and day what it is that we can accomplish together. And it's definitely not, I'm just honored to be a part of it, and thankful that that I am part of that channel as well. But I loved that regards. So talk to us about New Earth, because New Earth is like this huge topic of yours. I feel like in all of my research and like the podcasts that I listened to, a little bit of yours, like I kept hearing New Earth, New Earth. So I'd love for you to share like your definition of New Earth with us, and we can just kind of start there.
Yeah. And I love that you say your definition, because it's just, again, like where I'm at is just from my very humble lens and what I've been through. And it is what we actually are creating. And I feel that, we are actually there in the foundational sense. And to some degree, there is a bit of a split going on, because if we again talk about consciousness, it's like if we're creating a reality based on our consciousness, and this can get very esoteric. I've heard of some very esoteric ways of explaining this.
Same.
But yeah, but I'm going to try to keep it like not super esoteric. But it is really starts with us, right? It's within first, and then it's without. So New Earth is within you. It is an extension of your consciousness. It's what reality do you want to create? And do you want to have this expansive human experience? Do you want to create from this innate essence, this divine essence that is the truth of who you are? Or do you want to create from the smallness and the shadows and the patterns, which again, those patterns and shadow aspects do serve a purpose in helping you unravel and really crack that wide open. But as far as like where we're going with this New Earth, like some of the components of it, I truly feel like there is hierarchy is not a thing there, because again, if we're all a unique piece of the puzzle and we all have a beautiful offering, it's just such a different energetic. And another thing is, right now we have so many separation templates infused on this planet. And it also ties back in once again to your episode that you did on this, because anything that is designed to pit people against each other and is just extreme, it's like you're already anchoring in fear and chaos. And why are we doing that? What purpose does it serve? Or again, if you turn on the news and it creates this fear response, you can choose to plug in and stay there. But the thing is when we choose to plug in and stay there, we're actually being a part of the creation of that thing that we think we don't want. And so every moment we have a choice of where we want to direct our consciousness. And I don't believe that there's necessarily any right or wrong on this, but where we direct it is going to be a result. So let's say, for example, I'll use an example. If you plug into some of the things that's going on and you're plugging into this fear, and then you run out to Costco and you fill all your car up, not to say that you can't prep, but I actually, like at the very beginning of this, there was one point where I thought like all hell was breaking loose, and I plugged into that, and then it never happened. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on what we're choosing to create and creating from that space? Because we always have a point of attraction, and we're creating either consciously or unconsciously. So this New Earth, to me, the word harmony, I keep hearing harmony, like it's this beautiful energetic of harmony. And to be honest, I don't know when we're going to be there, because I don't feel that it's in a linear time pattern as we think of it. to me, time here, it's like more of like a spirally thing, or it's not so black and white. It's not linear. And so again, going back to, it starts from within, because I feel what we're going through right now is like this collective dark night of the soul, this dismantling of all the lies, all the untruth. So it's happening on an individual level. It's happening on a collective level. It's kind of a circus out there at times, but we can't build a foundation on lies, deceit, all this stuff, because this stuff, the lies never stay hidden forever. Like nothing is permanent. So the lies come up to the surface, and then it's like an opportunity to take a look of it and course correct in the way of emotions are a beautiful compass, because does this feel good? Does this feel expansive? Oh, no, it doesn't. This is outdated. Cancel, clear, delete. I'm going to go ahead and choose this that's more in alignment. And so it's, again, circling back to that, it's first with you. It's first with you bringing your unique gifts and essence online, because if we're so worried about what's going on the outside, to me, it's like a way that we're choosing not to be in the present moment with what's going on the inside, because we can't force anybody to do anything. I don't know about you, but anytime I've had someone tell me, oh, you need to do it this way, you need to do this, I'm like, no, probably not. Probably not. So does that kind of answer your question? And hopefully it wasn't too like woo woo.
No, absolutely. I feel like you touched on so many things that, great points, plenty of things to unpack. I think that one of the big things that you touched on that you had touched on earlier that I forgot, it wasn't when you were talking, I was like, oh, that's what it was. Just the importance of really understanding that whatever it is we're focusing on is what we're creating in our world, you know? And so, yes, we have this opportunity to build a new world, new earth, whatever, or not. And I think when we get locked in the timelines that take us off course, whether through fear, whether whatever, you know, the thing that I really came to see very clearly in 2020 was you know, that whole old adage of like, take one day at a time was like, legit. And then two was realizing that all of the ideas and the, you know, this might happen and this might happen and all the talk and discussion, and like I needed to be like, no, this is what I know right now. And if I don't know that, then that is not, I don't make space for that. Yeah. I don't welcome that into my energy, because I don't need to feed that. You know, I could go off on some crazy tangent about what the vaccine might do to me, or what, you know, like, what do I know? That is where I come home to. And that is what personally guides me. And I believe, like, similarly to you, that the timeline for all of this is up in the, because it's really up to us. It's up to our growth, up to how things, you know, we do or don't, what we don't accept or do accept on our path. So what are some of the ways that you suggest or recommend, you know, perhaps to your clients or whatever, to really sort of step into this new earth time, to really take advantage of, I think, the opportunities to really become fully aligned with ourselves we're being given right now? And yeah, I mean, it's painful. It can be, but it all, of course, there's always lessons involved in that too. But I'd love to hear, some of your suggestions.
Yeah. So I always say three things. It's a combination of conscious creation. So connecting with the frequency of what it is you choose. And I offer this or something more expansive. So even like that aspect of you that's in vibrant health and radiance, that aspect is already available. That frequency is already available. It's just setting the intention to connect to that and feeling into that energy and just choosing it. Even if you can't see it, or even if you don't fully know, again, intention is so powerful. You can ask your higher self, creator, God, source, universe, whatever word resonates, to assist you with that. But stepping into that and planting those energetic seeds, and really those instructions, like you're giving the instructions to all the cells of your body. And we may not realize how powerful it is, but it's so powerful, so powerful. And the second thing is presence. So all we have is the now moment. And it's part of showing up for like manifestations in a way where like we're not getting upset if it shows up today or doesn't show up today or shows up a year from now. It's like that like kind of set it and just let it release it. And then taking that inspired action, of course. But presence I found to be so powerful because so many of us, myself included, have been so anchored in the past or so anchored in the future of what's going to happen that we forget, well, what's going on right now. And oftentimes when we're not connected to the now, we're not connected to our breath. We're not connected to what's happening and the beautiful things that we can be savoring in this moment. And so presencing yourself, whether that just be if you realize like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling a little flustered, like closing your eyes, placing a hand on the heart, the belly, wherever, and just taking like some conscious breath into your belly and allowing that reset. Because another thing that this does is if like a story's looping and you're telling a story and you're like and you're like being the observer of that, then it actually like cuts that off when we presence ourselves and take a deep breath and just bring ourselves into the now moment, calling back all parts and aspects of us. And then the third thing is the energy healing, the resistance. So when meeting that resistance, when it does come up, if you need to cry, like if it's wanting to come out, if you need to scream, if you feel called and guided to go exercise or whatever it is, get some assistance with your healing or whatever you feel called and guided to do, but working with those things that aren't you and letting those go, releasing those, reprogramming, turning pain to wisdom, like cancel, like I call them energetic software programs, like deleting the old programs. We update our phones all the time. It's kind of the same thing for those of you who love metaphors. It's like we're reprogramming those energetic software programs, and you can learn practices that work for you, but oftentimes it's so simple as identifying the old one, cancel, clear, delete, and then downloading what it is you choose from your higher self creator. It's so available, but it's also one thing I found that's powerful is just saying, I choose to see the truth. I'm willing to see the truth. And then the consistency, because oftentimes too, what I've noticed is that, and I've had this before where I'll do a practice a couple of days and like nothing happened, but consistency is so powerful as well. Like showing up, whether it be, your morning practice of whatever works for you, meditation, breath work, journaling, working out, drinking, water, a cup of water and infusing that with love, because water literally takes on the consciousness of whatever we tell it to take on. And our bodies are primarily made of water. So we can work with that sort of thing, like really making that practice your own and having some consistent practices of connecting with yourself in whatever way works for you and really getting to know yourself on a deeper level. Oftentimes we can go in and be like, oh, these relationships aren't working out. This is problematic. But it's like, well, let's take it back. How's your relationship with yourself? How are you showing up for yourself? Because that's like the most beautiful relationship we can have is first and foremost with ourselves.
I love that. Yeah. Consistency is, even as a marketer with my agency, that was always, I wrote so many articles. I preached until the sun came up. It was like the number one thing that you must do is be consistent. And I feel like with having a spiritual practice and being able to arm yourself in these times, being able to, I channel the Akashic records, and every month, basically for the forecast for, at least 6 or 7 months now, they always mention at least once this deep importance of us really cultivating a strong foundation for ourselves, and consistency is number one there. And like you said, it doesn't matter what it is, but just showing up consistently. So as we're kind of wrapping up here with the main questions before we jump into the lightning round, I'd love for you to share with us about your community, embodied essence, and like some of the ways that folks could work with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. And thank you for letting me share my work. And I really appreciate it. So yeah, my embodied essence community is literally my offering, that all my offerings come from my heart, but this one is just like my baby. I love this community. It's a place where I show up once a week and we do this work that I mentioned. So the conscious creation, the breath work, presencing stuff, and the energy work. So I have created my own modality. I don't even have a name for it, but it's a combination of everything I've learned, and I just bring it in a way that is accessible to everybody. So, if anything resonates and you have a question, the first session, you're more than welcome to join us for free to just try it out and see if it resonates with you. And So yeah, that's definitely a way to really dive into some of this work. If it's some of the energy healing, the body stuff, we have a within the community a program called Radiant starting. So we're going to be doing some energetic allergy healing and working with the systems of the body. So creating harmony within the body. So I'm really, really excited for that. So that yeah, that's a bit about my community, and my door's always open too. So if you have a question, DM me on Instagram. I love to hear from people. Even if you listen to this podcast episode and you have takeaways, like I absolutely love connecting with people in that way too.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah. The allergy stuff, I'm like, ooh, I've always dealt with allergies. Up until a couple of years ago, I guess they've kind of left my system, but I think it's really fascinating that you did energetic, like allergy. Like I'm gonna have to ask you about this after.
I love it. Yes.
Okay. So lightning round, 4 questions. I don't know why my microphone just started going nuts on me. What's up, Mercury retrograde? Okay, so let's do it. First question. What is the one habit that you can't live without?
Meditation / breath work. Can it be 2?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
meditation / breath work. Oh, I love it. Do you want like really short answers? Is that the lightning round? This is so great. I love it. Okay. Yes, that's my answer.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Number 2, what does spirituality mean for you?
Connecting with yourself. So simple, like connecting with yourself and knowing who you are and what you are as your number one priority and making it all your own.
Yes, love that. What is your advice to anyone who's looking to find purpose?
I would suggest pulling your human design, your gene keys, but also ask the universe, ask your higher self to show you what your next step is. Because sometimes we don't need to know the next 10 steps. We just need to know the next one step. So ask for that guidance, and it always shows up. It might not show up in the way you think it will. And then the tools that I would recommend is pulling your human design, your gene keys, because it can give you some very powerful, the codes in your gene keys give you very powerful places to contemplate and start as part of listening to that guidance. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I love the gene keys. They're amazing.
Oh, game changing. Like literally, yeah. I'm just like, I would tell everybody about them.
And you know what happens when a generator falls in love with something.
Oh,
Everyone will learn about them.
Sing it from the rooftops.
Okay, final question. So what is your favorite place to hang out online? Like where can folks come hang out with you?
My podcast is my favorite free offering where people can just come hang out in the energy and space that's been created. It's called New Earth Visionaries. That's my favorite spot.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So we will, will you share with us like your website and stuff? Of course, I'll include all of your links in the show notes, but just in case someone doesn't want to go diving in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my Instagram is my name, Amanda Monnier. My website is also my name, Amanda Monnier. So you can find me there. And again, open doors. So if you want to chat, DM me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for making time to come hang out with us today and just sharing your wisdom and full heart. And I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing with your community and your people. And yeah, I love meeting folks who have made such huge shifts in their life and are just clearly rocking it out. So thank you so much for all you do and all you are.
Oh, thank you, Anna. I really appreciate it. I have loved connecting with you, and thank you everybody for listening to what I had to say today. I just appreciate it. I'm just so honored, so grateful. So thank you so much. I love the community you're creating as well and your energy. And so I'm just so honored. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, if you were inspired by today's interview, make sure to hit us up. Tell us what you thought. You can find us on social media, send an email. Be sure to leave a review on iTunes and subscribe. Definitely join the email list for podcast updates and helpful resources. Thank you again for being here. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next week.